Tyree Walker was leaned on quite a bit, maybe more than some people anticipated because of various situations and injuries and so forth. But he's off to Wisconsin. When I look at Javante Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk's name, Jason, I'm remembering going back to their recruitment. Of course, they came in together. People were excited about them being the combo of the future. And ever since, at least in my eyes, it has swung back and forth in regards to who's had the advantage. You know, now I'm getting them mixed up in terms of who ran for 100 yards a couple times that first season and ran for 100 yards against Florida State in the bowl game. And then it seemed like, then he got nicked up the next year. And they kind of went back and forth in regards to who was going to be the guy to break through first.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right, Mark. And I think so when you look at Gavin Sawchuk was the guy that played in the bowl
Okay.
game, to your point, that really didn't play a whole lot at all during the season 2 years ago, but got that opportunity in the bowl game because of some other holdouts that were happening. And yeah, and to your point, performed really well. And unfortunately for him, to start the season, he had a little bit of a nagging injury that caused him to not be anywhere near 100%. But he had 5 straight 100-yard performances to end the season, including a 100-yard performance against Arizona. So like he had 744 yards, but kind of looking from a statistical perspective, 617 of his 744 came in the last 5 games of the year. 8 of his 9 touchdowns came in that span as well. So he's a guy that I think he's a good. I mean, I think you could probably 1,200, 1,400 yard type of kid if he is able to stay healthy throughout the year. So he looks to be healthy early on. I mean, from a spring practice perspective. So I think going into fall camp, he's probably your clear cut number one um, going into going into that now. And I think the other ones, as you'd mentioned with Tawi Walker transferring and going to Wisconsin, I think you've probably got a logjam for the next few backs. You mentioned Javante Barnes, I should say. Um, he's a guy, Mark, that I think has not is not incredibly lived up to those expectations. I think he unfortunately got himself into the doghouse a little bit with Jeff Lebby, and he really just didn't he didn't completely get out of the so he didn't really have a lot of opportunities. He went, back and forth, a little bit earlier in the year, and then, just as you can see here on the screen, just didn't get a lot of opportunities for whatever reason. He was a guy that actually was going to hit the portal um, this off season, but they were able to talk him into staying. So, we'll be interested to see with sort of a new regime there, if, what that looks like if he's able to, kind of bust through and be part of that group. And I think a couple other names to keep your eye on is Caleb Hicks. He's a guy that played a little bit, not very, very sparingly last year, but did really, really well in the spring. Last year in the spring, did really, really well this spring as well. But I think probably the guy that has the biggest upside of them all is true freshman Taylor Tatum, number one running back recruit by most in the country. 5-star guy, top 50, 75 kid overall in the country. So, and all returns seem to be him being, kind of living up to what they thought he was, at least from a summer perspective. So we'll see what happens in camp, and obviously, when the uh, when the pads come on, it's a little bit different, right? But he seems to be a guy that has an enormous ceiling. So I think very much like the conversation that we had with Jackson Arnold, I think he's probably, along with Gavin Sawchuk, probably the most talented kids on the roster. And so if he does the things that DeMarco Murray is wanting him to do, in terms of how he picks up blitzers, how he does in the receiving game, and just his ability to block and things like that, I think will go a long way. But DeMarco Murray's not really one of those that's very quick to hand out compliments But he's gushed over this kid a few times, so it'll be interesting to watch in fall and early on in the season what kind of how many carries that he's able to get and how good he's able to be as a true freshman and crack that either not necessarily starting lineup but be part of the regular rotation.
So if Tatum's as good as advertised, and he probably is long term, but maybe not necessarily as a freshman, but let's say he is able to pick up some of the nuances of the game, pass protect, so he's not a liability, and do some of those things. Do you think Sawchuck is a 15 to 20 carry guy, and they get Tatum and Barnes 5 or 6 or 7 each? Is that the
I
best
wouldn't
formula?
yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see how that probably starts that way, during the season, Mark. I think I do think that Oklahoma will run the football a little bit more with Seth Luttrell, a little bit more power, as opposed to a little bit more of a finesse style with Jeff Lebby. But yeah, I think that's fair to start the season, and then we'll see how that goes from there. If Tatum's one of those kids that he's just too good to keep off the field and limit to those amount of carries, then yeah, absolutely it could end up being more of a kind of a 50-50 thing. And I think with Salchuk's injury this past year, it's obviously good to have multiple guys that they feel comfortable with going into the SEC. But yeah, I think he's a guy that I'm super excited for to see. Myself, multi-sport athletes, going to play baseball as well at Oklahoma. So will be very intriguing because maybe the depth isn't quite. I mean, it's there. It's just kind of unproven depth, if that makes sense.
Folks, we talk Oklahoma football with all of you each and every week, Jason and myself. So here's the deal. We don't always know when we're going to be able to get together, but all you need to do is subscribe to the channel and hit that bell for the notifications, and we will notify you on when we are going live.